All right, here we have our zombie guy that we were setting up. And we also created this animation blueprint here. And we have a zombie state. And this is our state machine with an entry, a zombie idle, and a walk. And I went ahead and added this event blueprint begin play. You can just right click and start typing begin, and you'll see event blueprint begin play. Let's grab our try get pawn owner here and bring it up here so that we can grab a reference to our zombie. Let's kind of set these a little bit higher up here. And if you recall, the last time we did this by casting it to a zombie. And so now we essentially are, at the very beginning, we're grabbing a reference to this character here, this zombie character. Now, in order to get a reference to the owner, which is essentially the zombie, so what we're doing is we're trying to store a variable that lets us access the zombie back and forth instead of just grabbing the zombie here. It's really simple. We did this last time. You just right click here and you promote this to a variable. And you'll see now um, we have this, I'll go ahead and this variable, but I'll just name it BP zombie, the variable. And there's our blueprint zombie variable. Now, if you recall from last time, what we did before we did the blended state machine is we just grabbed a reference from our, essentially our character. So we're going to grab it from our zombie here. And we want to essentially get the velocity of this character as they're moving and then switch it between walk and run. So remember, we just kind of dragged this out and we just type velocity. And we want to, let's see, get velocity here. And that's going to get our velocity, as how fast is our character moving forward or backwards, it's just how fast is it moving. And the way that we're going to, we can check how fast we're going is we get the length of that vector. Just same thing we did before. So I'm just going to drag this out, type length, and you want to make sure that you're getting a vector math function here. So now we have the length, or essentially how fast we're moving for our zombie. All right, so now because we're doing this with our, essentially in our event blueprint as our animation updates, we want to have we want to use our is valid node. And what this is doing is this is checking, is this a valid, like, is it there? Is it, like, it's kind of checking if this actually exists and if there's any issues. Actually, I think we need the other node. Yeah, I think I grabbed the wrong one. Let's see. This one right here. This will check, that's the question mark there, if this is a valid zombie object. Now, if this is valid, what we want to do is we want to set the movement speed. We want to store that. So we're going to need another variable for that. So we'll just call this zombie movement. And let's fix that O. And we want to make sure that this is a float. And I'm going to drag this out and I'm going to do a set. And that way, if it is valid, if it is our zombie guy, we'll set that speed and then the value we'll grab here. So now we're setting we're constantly updating the movement speed of our zombie. So hopefully this is making sense because we're doing it again for the second time. Move this up just a little bit so we've got them closer to each other. All right, let's make sure to compile and save that. And then let's go back to our zombie state machine. And if you remember from our zombie idle to zombie walk, let's double click this to go inside of here. And then we're just going to grab this movement speed here. And what we're going to say is if it is greater than 0, our character is essentially walking. Because remember, this is going to be updating the movement speed as our character goes. So let's compile and save that. And then what we want to do inside of here, let's go back to our state machine here. And let's go inside of back from our walk to our idle. And let's grab the zombie movement again. And then for this one, equals equals. If it's equal to 0, then we are obviously not moving, and we can transition that way. Sometimes, because depending on the slope of your character or the things, like they might like start moving just a little bit. So sometimes it's better to use less than or equal than 0, but let's test this out and see how this works. Save this too. One other thing I'm noticing is our character just stays stagnant after a while. So what we have to do is go inside of your zombie idle and then select your zombie idle, and then we need to loop animation here. And then we have to do the same thing for the walk. You have to go into our zombie walk, select your zombie walk here, and then we have to make sure that we loop the animation here. All right, so let's go back to our zombie blueprint. And you can see now he's constantly idling. And let's go into let's start scripting actually our zombie movement so that when it sees our player, it starts chasing after him. So let's go to our event graph here and then right click and just type move to. And what you're looking for is the AI section, which is here, AI move to. And what's nice about this is you can see pawn, destination, success. So they did a lot of the scripting, which we've done in Unity, you know, C# on our own, is like getting a character to follow another character. But they give us this nice little node or this blueprint that will essentially do the same thing, help us chase the character, or the player rather. All right, so for the target actor, we're just going to get our player. And then we just plug that right into here. And then for this, we want self, because this is just going to reference the zombie guy. And then let me move these down a little bit. And then on event begin play, we're going to tell to call here. So we have our pawn and our target actor essentially as our what we're moving to. So let's compile and save this. Now, similarly to Unity, you need a nav mesh to actually get this to work. We used nav mesh agents and nav mesh AI before, so you can think of this as sort of the same thing. So back in our level here, we have our zombie here, which is our blueprint zombie. I'm going to keep that saved. We want to keep them in the level. If you don't have them in here, drag them in. And then I'm going to right click. Actually, we could just go here, go to, let's see, go to volumes, and then we want a nav mesh bounds volume. And if you don't see this, you might be in game mode, so hit G and you'll be able to see this, the nav mesh bounds volume. So I'm actually just going to position this right here. Just scale that up. And make sure to include like a good portion of your level. And if you hit the P key, you can see the coverage area of the nav mesh. So let's say you wanted your player to kind of start all the way out here before they're chased. You know, you want to give them kind of like a safe zone. Let's move this here. So I'll grab my player start here, and I'll just kind of shift it back here, like right outside of that nav mesh point. Let's see how that looks, if you can kind of see the zombie. So as we're walking or something, then you enter that nav mesh area here. So yeah, that's a pretty good distance. And then you're kind of surprised by this zombie. And actually, I had to take a look and I remind myself that the nav mesh will not, that it will not trigger or find that player unless the player starts within the nav mesh area. It's a little bit different than the way Unity does it. But if you drag your player start in there, you're going to see your zombie's like walking and following him. So he is chasing the player. And I think we're outside of the zone right now. Yeah, so we kind of went outside the zone. So let's make sure that this is like this nav mesh bounds is essentially as big or as wide as we want the zombie to be for chasing. There we go. And then I'll move my player closer and we should see him chase him even more. All right. So we got some movement, some running around, some animation triggering, and then once he gets to him, he idles. He's actually not trying to hurt him. All right, I think that's good. And we're actually now I'm thinking we might have to destroy. We're getting some shadows from where I think that's what's happening. Anyway, or it could be some artifacting. All right, I think that's good for this. This is where we learned some AI. We learned some. We did refreshed a little bit of how to set up a state machine and some triggers and stuff. And yeah, I look forward to expanding this game with you.